What happens when absolute power meets absolute paranoia? Secret police, mass purges, and a level of cruelty so extreme, even history books prefer to skip over it. These lesser-known dictators didn't just rule, they terrorized, and yet their names remain obscure. Time to change that. Rafael Trujillo, the Butcher of the Dominican Republic, 1930. The Dominican Republic holds an election, but let's be honest, Rafael Trujillo already decided he was winning. He rigs the vote so blatantly that he officially wins 99% of the ballots. No pretense, no subtlety, just pure dictatorship from day one. Once in office, he wastes no time turning the country into his personal empire, running it with the efficiency of a mob boss and the cruelty of a medieval warlord. First, he rebrands the entire country. The capital, renamed Siodad Trujillo. Bridges, schools, parks, everything bears his name. Churches start offering prayers in his honor. Businesses are required to display his portrait. Children recite pledges of loyalty in school. And if you don't show enough enthusiasm, that's considered treason. His secret police, the SIM, Servicio de Inteligencia Militar, make sure nobody lacks the proper level of devotion. His favorite method of dealing with enemies? Making them disappear. Political opponents vanish overnight. Suspected traitors are found floating in rivers. The SIM runs torture centers, where prisoners are electrocuted, burned, and slowly executed. Ordinary citizens whisper in fear. One casual joke about Trujillo in a market could mean a death sentence. His total body count? Over 50,000 deaths. But Trujillo's most infamous crime happened in 1937. He decides there are too many Haitians in the country, so he orders a wipeout. Soldiers go from town to town, forcing people to pronounce the Spanish word for parsley, perejil. Those who can't roll the R properly, executed on the spot. The Parsley Massacre kills between 12,000 and 30,000 people in just 5 days. Meanwhile, he's stealing everything. By the 1950s, Trujillo owns 80% of the country's industry. Sugar mills, hotels, even airlines. He becomes one of the richest men in the world, throwing lavish parties while Dominicans live in poverty. He forces women into relationships, including the wives and daughters of his own officials. By 1961, his paranoia catches up. His own officers turn on him. A CIA-backed assassination plot unfolds. On May 30th, while driving alone at night, a rare mistake, he's ambushed and shot over 60 times. Enver Hoxha, the man who turned Albania into North Korea. 1944. Albania is a mess, war-torn, occupied by foreign powers, and politically unstable. Enter Enver Hoxha, a Stalin-obsessed revolutionary who seizes power, declares Albania a communist state, and immediately starts purging anyone who looks at him funny. At first, he aligns with the Soviet Union, but after Stalin dies in 1953, Hoxha throws a tantrum, accusing Khrushchev of betraying true communism. By 1961, he cuts ties with the USSR, leaving Albania isolated. Then, in 1978, he ditches China too, after deciding Mao isn't hardcore enough. That's right, Hoxha's Albania becomes the most isolated country in Europe. No allies, no trade, no outside influence. Paranoia takes over. Hoxha thinks everyone is out to get him, so he turns Albania into a giant fortress. His government builds over 750,000 concrete bunkers, one for every 4 Albanians, draining the economy to protect against an invasion that never comes. These bunkers are everywhere: beaches, roadsides, city parks, even people's backyards. Albanians joke that the only thing Hoxha left behind was concrete and misery is the right word. His secret police, the Sigurimi, make sure no one steps out of line. Dissenters, arrested, tortured, or eliminated. Families are forced to denounce their own relatives. A wrong word at the dinner table could get you 10 years in a labor camp. Over his 40-year rule, thousands are killed or disappeared. Religion? Banned. Hoxha declares Albania the world's first atheist state in 1967, closing mosques and churches, jailing priests, and turning religious sites into warehouses. Even owning a Bible or Quran is a crime. By the 1980s, Albania is one of the poorest countries in Europe, with food shortages, blackouts, and a failing economy. But Hoxha lives comfortably in a palace, drinking imported whiskey and smoking Cuban cigars. The Albanian people, meanwhile, survive on rationed bread and government propaganda. 1985. Hoxha dies in his sleep, escaping justice while his people continue to suffer. His regime collapses a few years later, and Albanians finally see the outside world, realizing they've been living in a communist fever dream for decades. His legacy? A ruined economy, a traumatized population, and thousands of useless bunkers. Francois Duvalier, Haiti's Reign of Terror, 1957. Haiti holds an election. The country, already struggling with poverty and political instability, chooses Francois Duvalier as its new leader. He campaigns as a champion of the poor, a man of the people. Classic move. But once he's in power, the transformation is instant. Duvalier doesn't just want to rule, he wants to be feared. First order of business? The Tonton Macoute, a paramilitary death squad with one mission: eliminate anyone who even thinks about opposing him. By the 1960s, this group is responsible for up to 50,000 deaths. Some disappear overnight. Others are executed publicly, bodies left on display to send a message. Resistance? Not an option. But here's where things get bizarre. Duvalier isn't just another dictator with an iron fist, he's a full-fledged believer in voodoo mysticism. He claims to be the physical embodiment of Baron Samedi, the Haitian spirit of death. To drive the point home, he dresses the part: black suit, sunglasses, and an unsettling smirk. When his political rival, Clément Barbeau, challenges him, Duvalier orders his execution. But that's not enough. Convinced Barbeau has transformed into a black dog, he commands his men to hunt down and kill every black dog they can find. Logical. By the late 60s, Duvalier takes paranoia to a new level. He rewrites the Constitution, declares himself president for life, and starts purging even his closest allies. His personal doctor, dead. High-ranking officials, vanished. Even ordinary citizens aren't safe, saying his name in public can be considered treason. In 1971, after 14 years of terror, Duvalier died of heart disease. Finally, an end to his madness. Except, plot twist, his 19-year-old son, Jean-Claude Baby Doc Duvalier, takes over and continues the nightmare. Haiti never stood a chance. Jean Bedel Bokassa, the Cannibal Emperor, 1966. The Central African Republic, CAR, is barely scraping by when Jean Bedel Bokassa, a military officer trained by the French, decides democracy is overrated. He stages a coup, kicks out the sitting president, and declares himself in charge. At first, he plays it cool, claiming he just wants to restore order. But within months, he abolishes the Constitution and declares himself president for life. Power goes straight to his head. By 1976, being a mere president isn't enough. So, what's the next logical step? Emperor. Bokassa crowns himself in a $30 million coronation, fully funded by his starving citizens. His outfit? A 24-karat gold crown, a diamond-studded robe, and jewel-encrusted boots. His throne? Solid gold shaped like an eagle. Even Napoleon would call this a bit much. But Bokassa isn't just an egomaniac, he's a full-blown psychopath. Opposing him means instant death. He personally beats prisoners with his cane, watches public executions for fun, and feeds bodies to crocodiles. But that's not even the worst part. 1979. A scandal breaks out. Bokassa is allegedly eating his enemies. Reports surface that political prisoners are being butchered and stored in freezers inside his palace. French officials later claim they found human flesh in his fridge. Bokassa, of course, denies it, but also claims human meat is too salty. Not exactly a convincing defense. That same year, he commits his most grotesque crime. Hundreds of schoolchildren refuse to wear expensive uniforms sold by his family. His response? Mass arrests. Over 100 students are tortured and dealt with. This finally crosses a line. France, his former ally, launches Operation Barracuda, a military operation that removes Bokassa from power in just a few hours. He flees to Libya, then France, living in exile for years, only to return in 1986 like nothing happened. The new government arrests him immediately. He's sentenced to death, later commuted to life in prison, and eventually reduced to 10 years. By the time he's released in 1993, he claims he's the 13th apostle of Jesus. Bokassa dies peacefully in 1996, somehow avoiding the fate he forced on thousands. Yakubu Gohan, the man behind Nigeria's Biafra nightmare, 1966. Nigeria is in chaos. A military coup removes the government, followed by a counter-coup 6 months later. Enter Yakubu Gohan, a 31-year-old army officer who suddenly finds himself leading Africa's most populous country. He's young, inexperienced, and running a nation on the brink of war. At first, he promises peace. But when ethnic tensions explode, Gohan's government goes into full-scale extermination mode. The target? The Igbo people. By late 1966, an estimated 30,000 Igbos were slaughtered in northern Nigeria, hacked to death in the streets, or burned alive in their homes. Survivors flee to the southeast, where Igbo leaders declare independence, forming the short-lived nation of Biafra. Gohan isn't having it. He launches a brutal civil war in 1967, vowing to crush Biafra at any cost. Over the next 3 years, his military unleashes total devastation, bombing villages, burning farms, and slaughtering civilians. But his deadliest weapon? Starvation. Knowing Biafra depends on food imports, Gohan orders a complete blockade. No food, no medicine, no supplies. By 1968, images of starving Biafran children flood international media. Hollow-eyed, skeletal, their stomachs swollen from malnutrition. The world is horrified. Aid organizations beg to send relief, but Gohan refuses, claiming Biafra must surrender first. By the time Biafra collapses in 1970, the numbers are staggering. Over 2 million civilians dead, mostly from starvation. And Gohan walks away untouched. Instead of facing war crimes, he rules Nigeria for 5 more years, enjoying a lavish lifestyle while the country recovers from his war. Then, in 1975, he's overthrown in a bloodless coup while attending a meeting abroad. His punishment? Exile in the UK, where he studies political science at Warwick University, because nothing says war criminal like a British degree. Incredibly, he returned to Nigeria in 1983, rebranding himself as a peace advocate. No jail, no consequences, just decades of political influence and international recognition. He's still alive today, occasionally giving lectures on leadership, as if he didn't oversee one of the worst human rights disasters of the 20th century. Idi Amin, Uganda's nightmarish dictator. 1971. Uganda's military commander Idi Amin walks into the presidential palace and declares himself in charge. No election, no warning, just a full-blown military coup while the sitting president is out of town. The people cheer at first. They think Amin is a hero. They couldn't be more wrong. Within weeks, Amin starts eliminating enemies, real, imagined, or just unlucky. Political rivals, journalists, intellectuals, even army officers who helped him seize power, all executed. By the time he's done, 500,000 Ugandans are dead. Amin's methods? Creative in the worst way possible. He orders executions by hammer, electric shock, and forced suffocation. Sometimes, he has bodies dumped in the Nile, clogging the river with corpses. His victims include ministers, judges, and even his own wives, one of whom is dismembered and stitched back together wrong as a warning to others. And then, there's his legendary ego. He gives himself ridiculous titles, calling himself His Excellency, President for Life, Field Marshal, Lord of all beasts of the earth, and Conqueror of the British Empire. He claims to be a boxing champion, a doctor, a prophet, and a military genius. None of it is true, but who's going to argue? His most insane move comes in 1972. Amin expels 80,000 Asians from Uganda, claiming they're stealing wealth. The economy collapses overnight, factories shut down, businesses fail, and food shortages begin. But Amin throws lavish parties, buys luxury cars, and gorges on imported whiskey and lobsters. Then come the cannibalism rumors. His exiled cabinet members swear he eats human flesh, and he doesn't exactly deny it. He tells one reporter, "Human meat is too salty for me." Comforting. By 1978, Amin invades Tanzania for no reason. His undertrained army gets destroyed, and within months, Tanzanian troops storm the capital. Amin flees to Libya, then Saudi Arabia, where he lives in luxury for decades, never facing justice. He died peacefully in 2003. No trial, no punishment, just a comfortable retirement funded by stolen Ugandan wealth. 500,000 dead, and he gets a quiet death in exile. Mengistu Haile Mariam, Ethiopia's butcher. 1974. Ethiopia is in chaos. Emperor Haile Selassie, once seen as a near-divine ruler, is now an aging monarch, failing to feed his people. Famine, economic collapse, and mass protests shake the country. Enter Mengistu Haile Mariam, a military officer with zero patience for democracy. He helps lead a coup, overthrows Selassie, and immediately has him suffocated to death. His body buried under a toilet. Efficient. Mengistu and his military junta, the Derg, claim they're bringing revolutionary socialism to Ethiopia. What does that mean? Killing anyone who disagrees. Within a year, the Derg executes 60 former government officials in a single night. It's just the beginning. 1976. Mengistu decides Ethiopia needs a political cleanse. He launches the Red Terror, a nationwide purge targeting students, intellectuals, and anyone suspected of disloyalty. How do you spot a traitor? Easy. If someone opposes him, they're guilty. Government death squads publicly execute thousands. Streets are littered with bullet-ridden corpses as a warning. Bodies are dumped at schools, marketplaces, and bus stations. Families are forced to pay for the bullets used to kill their relatives. In just 2 years, over 500,000 people are massacred. Mengistu isn't done. 1983 to 1985. Ethiopia suffers one of the worst famines in history, killing over 1.2 million people. The global community sends food aid. Mengistu blocks it. His regime uses starvation as a weapon, refusing to let food reach rebel-held areas. Instead, he spends millions on Soviet weapons, tanks, fighter jets, artillery, while millions starve to death. His paranoia grows. Even high-ranking officials in his own government aren't safe. Suspected dissenters mysteriously disappear. When one general criticizes Mengistu's policies, he's thrown off a cliff. By 1991, the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, EPRDF, launches an offensive against Mengistu's government. Soviet support dries up, and his forces collapse. As rebels close in on the capital, he flees to Zimbabwe, where dictator Robert Mugabe offers him asylum. Somehow, Mengistu escapes justice. Despite being sentenced to death in absentia, he lives comfortably in exile, spending his later years gardening and giving history lectures, as if he didn't personally oversee one of Africa's worst atrocities. Still alive today, he remains one of history's bloodiest rulers who never faced consequences. Pol Pot, the architect of Cambodia's killing fields. 1975. Cambodia has been at war for years, and the communist Khmer Rouge finally seizes power. Their leader? Pol Pot, a former schoolteacher turned genocidal maniac. His mission? To erase Cambodian society and start over, because apparently, civilization is the problem. Step 1. Empty the cities. Within hours of taking power, Pol Pot's soldiers force over 2 million people to leave their homes. Sick, elderly, pregnant, doesn't matter. If you can't walk, you're left to die. The streets of Phnom Penh, once a bustling capital, become a ghost town overnight. Step 2. Eliminate intellectuals. Who counts as an intellectual? Anyone with an education, anyone who speaks a foreign language, even people who wear glasses. Because, in Pol Pot's mind, glasses equals reading equals thinking equals dangerous. Step 3. The killing fields. Over the next 4 years, Pol Pot's regime disposed of nearly 2 million people, a quarter of Cambodia's population. People are subdued with hammers, axes, and bamboo sticks to save bullets. Entire families are wiped out, so no one is left to seek revenge. In some camps, prisoners are forced to dig their own graves before being killed. But starvation does just as much damage. Pol Pot's idea of a perfect society is an agrarian utopia, so he bans private property, money, and markets. Food is strictly rationed, and millions are forced into backbreaking labor on collective farms. The result? Mass famine. People eat rats, insects, and even tree bark to survive. By 1979, Cambodia is a corpse-filled wasteland, and Pol Pot is still convinced he's winning. But when Vietnam, tired of his nonsense, invades Cambodia and topples his regime in just 2 weeks, he flees into the jungle, leading a sad, powerless Khmer Rouge guerrilla movement for years. Despite being responsible for one of the worst crimes in human history, Pol Pot never faces trial. In 1998, his former allies turn on him, and he's placed under house arrest. A year later, he dies peacefully in his sleep. His last meal? A plate of fruit. No justice, no consequences. Just another dictator who got away with everything. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, The Reign of Fear in Equatorial Guinea, 1979. Equatorial Guinea is already a nightmare. The country's first president, Francisco Macias Nguema, turned it into a slaughterhouse, executing a third of the population and closing all schools. His own nephew, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, is watching closely. Then, in a brutal coup, Obiang overthrows, arrests, and executes his uncle. Sounds like change is coming, right? Not exactly. Obiang doesn't just take over. He rebrands himself as a god, literally. State propaganda claims he communicates directly with God, can kill people with his thoughts, and doesn't need to answer to laws. He also declares himself the country's permanent president because elections are for peasants. Dissent? Not allowed. His military police abduct, torture, and dispose of anyone suspected of opposing him. Prisoners are electrocuted, beaten, and starved, with many simply disappearing. Human rights groups call Equatorial Guinea one of the most repressive nations in the world. Meanwhile, the country is sitting on billions of dollars in oil reserves. Instead of using it to improve lives, Obiang hoards the wealth, living in gold-plated mansions, while most citizens survive on less than $2 a day. In 2003, a U.S. Senate report revealed his family controls over $700 million in offshore accounts. His son, Teodorin, takes it even further, buying a $30 million Malibu mansion, luxury sports cars, and a collection of Michael Jackson memorabilia, including the diamond-encrusted glove. Obiang's brutality gets even darker. In 2010, multiple reports claimed that his government was involved in cannibalism. Yes, actual human flesh consumption. Defectors allege that he eats his enemies' testicles and brains to absorb their power. Naturally, Obiang calls this slander. But here's the kicker. He's still in power today. Obiang is the longest-serving dictator in the world, ruling for over 44 years and still rigging every election to stay in office. When asked about democracy, he laughs. Opposition leaders? Killed or jailed? Corruption charges? Brushed off? His net worth? Over $600 million. And yet, world leaders still shake his hand, proving that sometimes dictatorship isn't just about brutality, it's about knowing how to play the game.